Third point that I want us to discuss, is the design and deployment of ICT. The design. In the first part, we've talked about the things that one will need to pay attention and other aspects. In fact, maybe in this particular slide, allow me to put another slide. Sorry. Okay. This what we call user design experience. We can call them factors, okay, that one can actually pay attention to. One of the things that you'll pay attention in this, which then plays an important role in whatever that you are doing, is what we call knowledge.
Wait, see, I'm
and the
supposed to call it when the
skills
class ends. You'll
of
come back
the
and take
user.
me.
So you need to be aware what's the knowledge and what's the skill level of the user, because that will then will determine a number of things. For instance, have some skills of a given device, then your application should, as much as possible, try to use that kind of technology. If your users maybe they speak, rather they don't have any clue about something, do not use it. So basically, that's what we say: knowledge and skills of the user determine the kind of system and devices or technology that we are going to have. The other things is what we talk about social, economic level. I think I've given an example. One of it is that not necessarily come up with something that it cannot be within the reach of the person that you want to use it. So the other thing, this is purely when you are looking at at the user. There is what we also talk about the context. In other words, in context here is where and how the system will be used. Now, for instance, if you are doing an application for a farmer, now, and this farmer you are saying is a small-scale farmer. You very much know that a small-scale farmer, what if it's a system you are doing, what technology is he likely or is she likely to be aware of or likely to be able to access? If you do a web-based application, that is not bad, but it's not good enough, because a web-based application, one then will need a laptop or something like a computer, or even that's a desktop, a phone. But then it means you must change the structure of your system, so then it is adaptable. Because a farmer most likely is going to have a phone, and most farmers, and you are saying small scale, are likely to have maybe a USSD enabled phone, not maybe a smartphone which is going to use maybe Android or iOS. So in that particular case, therefore, you looked at the context. In other words, where is this farmer and how is this farmer going to use it? So that then you can actually then be able to do a design which responds to that particular context. Okay. Um, the other thing that you need to know is the technology available and accessibility. Sorry. So we talk about now availability and accessibility. Okay. So so you in that particular case then do not use something that or use a particular technology that's no longer to be available. Um, as I say, this is more. You realize that if you did an application and maybe the technology that you have used is maybe, let's say, for instance, iOS, you know very well the majority of the smartphones are Android, and then you are actually using, iOS. So it means, therefore, the uptake will be limited. So you need to be able to understand the technology available and its accessibility, among other things. Okay. Um, so these are some of the things that will inform the type of design and the type of system structure that you are going to have. Other aspect is what we call the scalability. Ability and the usability. Sorry, not stability, scalability and the usability. Okay. So in this particular case, is usability is what we talked about, aspect to deal with, how easy it is, and such kind of things. Usability here, e.g., you talk about navigability, others will talk about layout, structure, okay, etc. There are many aspects which affects usability. But scalability here, you are trying to look at whatever system that you are doing. You don't want to do a system that the user immediately you go we really want wants to expand but can't expand. So these are some of the factors that you consider in that application that you are doing. Try to reflect on how these things are affect your work. So therefore, the design and the deployment of ICT influence also by interest and orientation of some groups. And I think when you look at that, talks about the user at the center. So in fact, we talk about if you can get time, read on what we call user centered design methodology. I'll try to explain this. What user-centered design methodology implies is that whatever method that you are going to use, be it agile or whatever, various agile has its own methods within. What it means at the center is the user, and that's where in the previous slide here, we talked about likely uses, okay? Manages workers. How do we, that means you are paying attention to the user, that the user is at the center. So if it's whatever you pick, make reference to the user. You are like, okay, if I use this method, how would the user, feel? If I use the other method, how would they, would it impact the user? So that's what we call the user that to read a little more rather than read it. You deploy, try to understand what are the interests and what's the orientation. You want to see a little bit more on the orientation than maybe in the third slide from now. Stakeholders for ICT design differ depending on the nature of the ICT and the designing organization. The stakeholders may include the design team itself, the people who will actually utilize the ICT, people and the groups that depend upon the functioning. So they will be the people who will say this is what we want and this is how it will be. But now, when we talk about the orientation, is how they actually make this. Thus, the deployment of ICT application requires the collaboration or involvement of a variety of distinct communities or users in that particular case. So have them, and let's have them tell you what they want. Then this brings in what we call technological determinism. So when you have these people, you are able to understand their thinking, then you are able to determine what they want. You are able to determine the type of technology that they want. You are able to determine the type of design that they want. And with that, then what the consequence is there will be good uptake, there will be good, acceptability of the technology, and then everything will be easier. So, similar to direct effect models, technological determinism treats ICT as information processing system whose technical characteristics cause specific social change when they are adopted and used. So indirectly, what I'm actually saying that determine, and more better still, you can actually look at it from what I talked about here, technology availability and accessibility, where I said you cannot, for instance, design a system which is Android enabled when everybody else in that locality he has what we call a USSD, technology. So in that particular case, you can see technology has been a direct determinant on the type of, application you want to come up with. While technological determinism can be applicable and useful in situations that are characterized by high degree of control and short time frames, it has limited value determining and the complex situations that unfold over a large period of time. And that is true. So you see, the people here are actually saying, okay, this is what we want because it is the one that we need. This is the one that we have. But so what happens when different players come into, there can be a change. And you have actually seen that some systems are changing quite often as the technology itself changes. So, and that is the reality. But then you cannot therefore do a system without paying attention to that technology. I know in one of the units that you are doing, when you look at distributed objects and web services, I think in one of the sections you are going to talk about, or maybe you've talked about, I don't know, on what we normally say that there's a shift from technology into problem. That modern system developers need to focus more on what? On the problem they want solved, irrespective of the technology. And that is where now web services come in. That so the thinking here, and without going into the nitty-gritties of that, the other unit, the thinking is like if you focus on the problem, you are in what we call the problem domain level. Now, if you focus more on the technology, you are in the technology level. So then, as a good scientist, you must understand on how to manage the two. And by the use of web services, therefore you can come up with a solution irrespective of the technology. But here, Today, what I'm talking about is I am in a context where everybody has this particular technology. So, how do I make sure that whatever I come up with is acceptable? So, I must understand what people need. So here you are tackling two things. One, you know the problem. So focus on the problem, structure it. But then for it to be taken, for that application of your solution to be taken, then the people must actually also know how to use that particular technology. So very dicey situation. So that must be clear. And that's why here we are saying, so technological determinism cannot adequately account for the interaction between ICT, the people who design, implement, and use them, and the social organization context in which the technology and people are embedded. So itself, we cannot, and that's what I'm trying to bring into the context, that do not obscure yourself from just, it's the technology, and then you move in. No. Also look at what is it that I am trying to solve and how do I solve it better. And that's what I've indicated. Then, which brings now what we call system realism. Now, system realism focuses on what we are actually saying, rules. And when you talk about rules, you are kind of talking about processes. And when you are talking about processes, it means then you are actually more, and you are like to understand more about the problem, and then you can actually be able to solve it clearly. And that is really here. What I've put here could be complex, but what I've explained previously, I think it's verses. Therefore, from this perspective, organization and the people who work in them constitute rational systems with formal common goals and work practices carefully designed to meet these goals. These systems can be analyzed at varying level, and then you can actually be able to clearly in terms of the cost and the benefit alternative, set good goals and good practices. And that is really from the rational system thinking, you are able to understand, okay, this system that I'm going to come up with, it is based on system rules. I'm sure you all know system rules determines the kind of code you are going to come up with, determines the kind of queries you are going to put, determines so many things. And therefore, it gives you the system structure. And with that system structure, then you can also now then tackle the road, the technology. So the two must be clear in you. Okay. And the other thing also here, you might not be very good in programming, but you can be very good in analyzing a problem, because you are actually rationalizing the way things are done. And then, coding, actually, you can actually train yourself on this anyway. System rationalization can be useful as a starting point to help understand the value of ICT, and that's what I'm saying, in organization practice, social activities, and work life, but it's not a good endpoint for analysis. So then where are we reading to? So that means we have come from technological, we have come determinism, we have come to system rationalism. So where are we going to? What then will be the end game? Okay, the end game is what I've actually talked about, that the integration of the two. Like an analytical model, system rationalism simplifies the nature of technology, the nature of the people, and their relationship, and the way in which people interact with the technology. However, the problem with system rationalism is not only that it represents simplification, but rather it represents the simplification that needs to emphasize formalities. Okay, so meaning therefore, do not stop at, I know the rules, and I'm sure I'm trying to bring these things into perspective. Whenever I teach what to call entity relationship diagrams, I actually start from this point of actually saying, what are the rules that you found, you found out in a given narrative, or if you went to an organization and found them doing something, what was governing those interactions? So you see, that will tell you a little bit more, but then you, who's now the expert, you will then come and actually say, how then do I actually change these rules into a system? Okay? How do I change these rules into a system? That way of changing the rules into the system becomes now the work of the expert. Because now you get to know, okay, if this rule and this rule are put, then I need to connect them using maybe a given algorithm. Or let me not go that route. Maybe use a given programming construct. If I use the word programming construct, I hope we are all together. There are different programming constructs one can use. For instance, one can use the if statement. Another one can actually say, maybe I'm going to use the nested if. So you see, in that particular case, you are moving from that realism into the formalization, into making this thing now work, into this thing to be a real thing, which now becomes a system. But then it will not also stop there until you do the implementation. So where have we come from? We've come from, I need to have the determinism mentality. And the determinism mentality will assist me get to know, all right, if I bring in a given system, which is maybe Android based, I am going to solve my problem. Now, system rationalism tells me, how do I then come up with this system? What are the rules? Then I need, the last part is the formalization, that I need now to put these rules into using maybe a particular programming construct or a system developing methodology so as to come up with a complete product, right? That is what the three slides in summary are saying, which is then now we say the first discrepancy between a formal listing of job tasks and how employees actually spend their time also includes the issue of how formal job description overlook the amount of dependence that workers have on others. Therefore, system rationalism depicts a streamlined process that are much more messy and complex. So in simple terms, what I want you to know, therefore, the take home here is you are actually doing IS, Information Systems Project. What technology am I using? Why am I using? We've discussed a number of things that you need to look at. Then the next thing is it the right one which fits into, the rational aspect, system rationalism aspect? Does it assist me to bring together the rules that govern that particular place where I'm going to do this system? Then ultimately, how can these three work together in a formal manner in order to solve the problem? So that is it for today. I hope when you get these notes, you will be able to reflect more, think more about the same. More importantly, is apply these things into your system. And then you can be sure that you do a system that when you go out there and you pitch it to anybody, people will be like, yeah, this is a very good system, because you have brought in, what is required, and then it reflects on the society. So with that, then we can stop there. And then I want to wish you the very best and a good afternoon. And keep working hard, keep safe, and let's see how it moves. Otherwise, we'll stop there. So still, the time I've given you, and I'm very strategic in when I give you this time, please. Whatever time I'm giving you right now is just like the things I'm saying. Just go to your system that you are doing, because I think we agreed that I will be giving you some time to be able to do this your IS project, and that's what I'm doing deliberately, and that's why I'm giving you, reflection point that go now into your system and interrogate it based on what we have discussed, right? That's when the concept that you are discussing will make sense to you, and you will see its importance in what you are doing. Good. So we'll leave there. Bye for now.